this infrastructure is coming, and you should be prepared for it.
This is episode 238 of the Community Broadband Bits podcast from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I'm Lisa Gonzalez. David Young, right-of-way manager for the city of Lincoln, Nebraska, has been on the show before to tell us about the city's investment in its extensive conduit network and fiber resources. This week, David's back to talk to Christopher about a new project that involves improving mobile wireless service throughout the city with small cell technology. Lincoln has recently entered into an agreement with a private provider, and thanks to resources that are already there, taking the next step to better service in Lincoln is a win-win for the entire community. David and Christopher go through the details and discuss how small cell technology is something local governments can be ready for.
Hey folks, this is Chris Mitchell, the host of Community Broadband Bits, and I just wanted to ask you if you could do us a real big favor to help us spread this show around, and that's to jump on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you found this show, and to give us a rating, give us a little review, particularly if you like it. If you don't like it so much, then maybe don't do that, but if you're enjoying this show, please give us a rating and help us to build the audience a bit. Thanks.
Now here's Christopher talking with David Young, right-of-way manager for the city of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Welcome to another edition of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and today I'm back with David Young, the fiber infrastructure and right-of-way manager for the city of Lincoln, the Public Works Department. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you back. I've always enjoyed our conversations, especially the off-the-record ones. And I'm hoping that for people who maybe are tuning in on their first show, you can just give us a quick reminder of what Lincoln is like. I think a lot of people might think of it as just being cornfields.
There is a lot of corn in Nebraska. Lincoln, 250,000 people, state capital, university, a seat. Exciting, growing population. Great place to live. Come visit us.
I really enjoyed it. I'll be coming back. We're going to be talking, we talked before about we've actually done two different shows with you over the past 13, 14 months, talking about the really great conduit system that you've built as a community. And today we're going to talk a little bit about small cells, and there's some integration between them. But let's just start off for people who might be thinking, small cells, my cell phone's already pretty small. What's a small cell?
Our cell phones are very small. Those of us who are old enough to remember the old Motorola bag phones are pretty amazed.
Yes.
The conversation should start off with macro cells, right? The big cell towers. Nobody wants them in their backyard. Those are the older technology. They cover generally 30 kilometers or about 5 miles in radius coverage area. Small cells are generally smaller antennas connected generally by fiber and cover about 3/4 of a mile for coverage area. So if you put 4 small cells inside the 5-mile coverage radius of a macro cell, you'll increase the efficiency of that macro cell by 75%. That's kind of the math on why carriers are going to small cells. They're easier to deploy. They're cheaper. A macro cell can cost you base rate $250,000 and go up from there depending on where you're putting it. A small cell can cost as low as $25,000 to put in.
And we're talking about primarily wireless from the big wireless companies, kind of mobile wireless rather than a fixed wireless, right?
Correct. This is specifically cell phone coverage. Not to confuse like Wi-Fi with wireless, but this is licensed by the FCC frequencies, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, those kind of carriers, regional carriers who license frequencies from the FCC and provide retail service over it.
And is this 5G? I hear a lot of times people talk about small cell and 5G in the same breath.
Well, yes and no. Is it 5G? No. Is it laying the infrastructure for 5G? Yes. Not to get too into the details, but 5G is based on the 5 gigahertz frequency, 5 gigahertz frequency. So,
and above, I think.
And above, right. And the distance that the higher frequencies travel is shorter than, say, the 2.4 megahertz range. So they can have a lot more information packed into them, but they can't go through trees or buildings as much. So what carriers are doing in advance of that is rolling out these smaller antennas, which are closer to the end user, so that when they want to change to, or when the technology is actually ready, it's not ready yet, but when they want to change, they can go out, replace the antennas, replace the radios with 5G compatible, and then start broadcasting the new frequencies. So this is laying the infrastructure for 5G, but 5G is several years away, as you know.
Let's talk a little bit about why the city of Lincoln cares about small cells. You're an employee of the city. Why have you gone to a lot of effort to make sure you had these sorts of policies available that we're about to talk about?
Well, a couple of things. Starting in 2012, the city adopted a broadband master plan. We wanted to have diverse carriers for businesses. We wanted to have diverse carrier choices for residents, including a fiber-to-the-home project. And the third leg of that program was mobile broadband, making sure that the infrastructure was available for carriers to come in and upgrade for the next 25 years of mobile broadband in Lincoln. So obviously our conduit system downtown was focused on businesses. Our fiber-to-the-home broadband franchise was focused on residential, and now our small cell program is really catered to allowing carriers to come into Lincoln, have one rule book to play by, and deploy as fast as possible and invest their money in Lincoln.
So let's just dig into that a little bit, and let's just pretend that I'm Verizon. I come to the city and I say I'd like to deploy X number of small cells, and I'm imagining the city as a Roman emperor, just thumbs up or thumbs down. What actually goes on to the process behind there? And actually, it might make sense to start with just a sense of: are we talking about hundreds of cells, thousands of small cells? What's the universe of the size?
So we expect in 2017 to have between 50 and 100 installed in Lincoln. It depends on if we have 2 carriers or 3 carrier partners. Overall, over the next 5 years, we expect more than 400 to be installed around the city. We think we'll cap out probably at 500 or 600 total in the city of Lincoln, and that's when our population grows up to about 300,000.
And that number, several hundred, of 500 small cells, that is considerably more cells than you've had before. I mean, you mentioned that the macro towers go quite far, but this would be a significant increase over this kind of permitting from historical norms, right?
Yes, it would be, and we're planning for that. We have been planning since the beginning on our broadband. Part of the issue was you can make yourself as attractive as possible, business-friendly, and reach out to the community and have a single point of contact, but if you can't get permits through quickly, there's going to be a problem for everybody on the execution side of the agreement. We consolidated all of our permits into one office, a Development Services Center, DSC, started in 2011, actually. And so we created a right-of-way permitting process where we have standards. If it's submitted by a licensed professional engineer in the state of Nebraska, then generally you get your permit in 2 days. The engineer has gone through, done the work, validated that where you're putting your underground or aerial facilities will fit with the city's comp plan, and then move forward quickly. With small cells, there's the additional problem or challenge of dealing with aesthetics. So we have a Capital Environs Committee. So if you're building in any of the visual corridors that view the Capitol building, you have to go before this committee, and small cells will go before that committee where they are located in those corridors. We also have an urban design committee for anything in downtown, and we have a historical preservation committee for historical areas. Generally, those committees are always focused on the aesthetics of any visual improvement. So building underground conduit, they really don't care. They're actually quite happy with that, and I have a good relationship with those committees. But putting in small cells, especially on an ornate pole or something like that, is a challenge. What I'd like to jump back to, though, if I can, why this is a big deal for cities. Some carriers are coming in and saying it's a small cell, it's small. In general, the amount of equipment can weigh between 250 and 300 pounds that they're putting on these poles. Those
poles are, they can vary, obviously, but you're talking about a significant amount of weight that can be 20 feet up, and so that creates some hazard potentially.
Correct. So that's from a city's perspective on the safety side. That's why it's a big deal. So some version of this, if a carrier comes in and asks to retrofit your pole, and are they taking on the liability if that pole falls down because they added 250 pounds to a pole that was not designed for it? In Lincoln, we require, as part of our small cell agreement, that the pole be replaced with a pole that is designed for small cell applications, and it is double the diameter. Most of our poles are 6 inches, and this is an 8-inch, so I say double, but it's an 8-inch diameter pole, significantly stronger, significantly thicker sidewalls, designed specifically to hold this weight for 25 years, which is the life expectancy we have for these poles in Lincoln. I'm always cautious when some communities say they do retrofit, some say they require new poles. It's a very nuanced discussion. If you have concrete poles and you don't mind conduits and wires strapped to the outside of them, okay, maybe small cells attached to your pole is the thing to do for your community. But in a dense urban environment or urban environment where you have a lot of cars, I think that it's from Lincoln's perspective, putting in a pole that was designed to hold the weight of this equipment was paramount. And so that was what we have included in our agreement.
And as we start talking about this agreement that you've recently signed with Verizon, which I expect is a template agreement we'll see you signing with other carriers as well in the future, I don't get the idea that Verizon thought that was unreasonable. In some ways, I suspect that they would like the ability to standardize on a single pole and things like that.
That was the one thing that they really did like, is if we would agree to a single pole design for the majority of the city, and we did, and they actually assisted us in the design of the pole. The pole cost is about $2,600, and their equipment cost is $25,000. So adding 10% to the equipment cost for them was not a deal breaker. And they felt they would get more reliability from a pole design specifically to support this load than having to go out if it was knocked down or otherwise fell down and deal with that issue. So they were very amenable to that. Now, the standard pole design we have fits about probably 90% of our poles. The other 10% are historical and entertainment district, capital environments poles, and those are excluded, but there's a process where they can go get approval for those areas because we want them to deploy this technology. We just want to do it in a safe and considerate manner.
Well, and I think it's worth noting a couple of things, just key details that I want to make sure people really got, and that's that we're talking about light poles. We're not talking about utility poles that hold like lines and wires and things like that. These are light poles.
Not a street light pole, so it's not like a traffic pole. It is specifically for lighting the roadway. It doesn't have the red, yellow, green lights on it, if you will. So those are two different styles of pole, traffic pole versus street light pole.
Right. And then the other piece is that in the downtown area, you have banners on it, which will be pretty nice.
So one way to cover, so there's two components to a small cell generally. There can be more. The radio, which is a suitcase-sized piece of equipment that is attached to the side of the pole. Generally, there are two of them, one for each frequency. And then there's the antenna. Many people see them as flat antennas. And what we have in our design is called a cantenna. If you think of a stovetop hat put on the top of the pole.
Ah, City of Lincoln with the stovetop hat.
Yes, I know. Very original. Which you can put 3 antennas inside that cantenna. And as antenna technology changes, you can actually put more of them in there.
Although those would be still from a single provider. You're not going to get AT&T and Verizon sharing that, is what you've told me.
Correct. Co-location on poles, while desirable from certain perspectives, is not desirable from every perspective. Each carrier has their own frequencies. Those frequencies attenuate differently, right? And they are on different macro towers around the city. The carriers their signals attenuate differently, and what the technology is right now, you could end up with 500, 600 pounds of equipment on a single pole. Basically taking a macro cell tower and shrinking it, but not having an aesthetic improvement. There are several examples where Chicago did something like this a couple of years ago. If you get on the internet and look up, Chicago small cell co-location, you'll see some pictures. It's not very pretty. It definitely does not meet the aesthetic bar that we were looking for. So allowing carriers to pick from any of our 40,000 poles, we're very unconcerned about which pole you choose as long as it's outside one of our sensitive areas. And put your equipment up, very fast process. You agree to the pole design that is in the agreement and go forward and grow your infrastructure. That's specifically what we wanted. So what we did not want was a shrunken down version of a macro cell on the street corner with 60 antennas on it.
Right. One of the things that you've told me before is that, as we're thinking about what Verizon gets out of this agreement, their ability to rapidly deploy, I think, is very important, right? They have a standardized design. They have a sense that when they put in a permit, you'll turn around pretty quickly and they'll be able to get it out there.
Correct. Our permit process for small cells is we took two existing process, our administrative review process, which we use for most of our planning, which is actually run by the planning department. So planning events when you're wanting to come in and do a new building downtown or a force main sewer for development, you go through the administrative review process. And then the second process is right-of-way construction, which is just a 2-day permit to get your permit. By utilizing existing processes to run this through, the planning department reviews the small cell application. Is it in a sensitive area? Yes or no? Are you using the standard pole? Yes or no? If you're proposing no to sensitive areas and yes, you're using the standard pole, you should get your permit back in less than 10 days. Very quick turnaround. And then on the right-of-way construction side, we process 500 right-of-way construction permits a year right now with our Fiber to the Home project. So we'll just stick it in there. We're not worried about another 50 or 100 permits in that queue.
Let's talk about I think the area that I'm more interested in, that a lot of folks are more interested in, which is what does the community get out of this agreement in terms of the way you've set it up?
The most important thing for us with the broadband community plan was to get better coverage and more investment by private partners in Lincoln. Lincoln and many other communities our size are competing with Houston, Texas, Chicago, New York City for investment dollars. So we need to deploy and make ourselves able to have carriers deploy this infrastructure in our community affordably, but not in a way that compromises our principles or agreements that we have with existing carriers. So for us, the single most important thing is getting better cell coverage in Lincoln, period. That's the reason we went into this in advance of being reached out to by any carriers. Going from an average of 12 to 15 megabits a second on a good day to 150 to 180 megabits a second on a small cell day. As a mobile customer myself, I'm pretty excited about that.
This seems like one of those things that people don't always appreciate, which is that a company like Verizon is trying to figure out where are we going to invest, and even it's not just necessarily the entire United States, but they might look regional. And so Lincoln wants to be getting that better technology than Omaha. You want to make it easier, and hopefully you'll get it and have better coverage than Omaha has.
Right, and broadband is pervasive in our life these days, and it's very painful when you travel and go to a place that does not have that. It really brings into focus how much we've become reliant on this technology. I can imagine it's the rollout of the telephone in the 1900s. The minute you get it, you didn't know what you were living without it. Competing with other places, getting the investment here in Lincoln is kind of the overarching goal. There are several benefits that we have as part of our agreement, which we think are mutual benefits actually for both the carrier and the city when this infrastructure goes in. There's fiber for the city placed inside the pole and from our conduit system to the pole. There's power in the pole for public applications. There is what we call a public access port on the pole, which is a standard opening size that is designed to connect either cameras or public Wi-Fi or like smart radar for vehicle-to-vehicle communication. that's included as well. So we will be able to hook up those applications directly to our public network as soon as the pole is installed, really.
Some of the geekier folks, the utility-minded folks might be looking at. I mean, there's some things like Verizon will have to take on the cost of maintaining the pole if presumably lightning hits it or a car drives into it or something. If that happens to a regular pole, your utility has to fix it. But if it happens to a pole that Verizon's replaced, then it's on them.
Well, and that's, you have a 12-page contract, and there's all kinds of details in there. Maintenance of the pole is the responsibility of the carrier who leases the pole. So if it does get knocked down or needs to be painted, that maintenance cost is on the person leasing the pole. But the city still owns the pole. In return for that, the carrier gets the speedy deployment and gets to choose their own pole. So the city is really not active in saying, we want you to choose this pole versus that pole. From a philosophical perspective, we're letting the engineering dictate where the pole goes, not the business case, because it's the same price wherever they choose to build their pole. So we want good coverage. And then a few of the other things that are included in the agreement are security. They have a $50,000 letter of security with the city that if there's ever a problem, we contact them, and if they don't respond, we will go out and do the work to remove the equipment and then charge their letter of security. So that kind of protects us as well. So we're not exactly concerned about it. I know there's been instances where people are concerned, other communities are concerned, what happens in 10 or 15 years when this technology is depreciated and they decide they want to move to another area and do something else. How do they get rid of the equipment? That covers us from a risk standpoint to get that equipment removed. For us, I think the most important thing is we're taking an asset that was costing us money and repurposing it for provisioning of services so that our citizens get better cell coverage and faster cell coverage. And we get no maintenance costs for the pole. We get the partnership and investment and jobs that are created by developing and deploying this infrastructure. And we get a few nice things like fiber and maintenance costs of the pole, power, and a little bit of money on the end. Yes,
and so just to be clear, there's an upfront fee for Verizon to apply, and then there's a recurring fee for every year that they're on the pole.
That's correct, and we designed this program specifically to be carrier neutral. Verizon was the first one to work with us. We are very hopeful that AT&T or T-Mobile, Sprint will come as well, and we are actually working with one of those carriers right now to sign another agreement. The city charges $19.95, so just under $2,000 a year rent to attach to the pole, and then there is a $1,500 permit fee, and that $1,500 permit fee covers actually quite a bit, going out, looking at the pole, site visits, multiple site visits, communicating with the property owners adjacent to the pole, and then so at $2,000 a year, you have 100 poles. You have $200,000 a year. It's not that much, but over the next 5 or 6 years, when you get into 400 and 500 poles, it's $1 million a year, which is not a bad program to have for a city for taking something that was costing us money and turning it into something that is achieving multiple goals.
Well, and I think one of the things that people don't always realize, I just saw this story out of the Research Triangle in North Carolina, where there's been some challenges with some of the entities that are working in the right-of-way having damaged other people's equipment and not restoring things the way they should be. Those are the sorts of things the city has to be able to check on, and that costs money to send people out there and do those investigations, right?
There's no philosophy behind it, but the city is obligated to manage construction that occurs in the public right-of-way. So that management of the right-of-way can be very limited in some areas. It can be very robust in others. If you can imagine somebody digging in downtown New York City, that's probably a very sensitive area to dig in.
Or Washington, D.C.
Versus, the western part of our city, which is cornfields, right? We don't have a lot of infrastructure out there.
Aha! I knew it. You had cornfields in Lincoln.
They don't call us the corn huskers for nothing. There's 250,000 people in Lincoln, and Lincoln is not a big city, so it is a very urban environment. digging downtown in the middle of the street, and I can tell you, you will get a lot of phone calls very quickly due to traffic backup. So basically having enough money, $1,500 is not a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money to go out, send inspectors multiple times, coordinate the excavation of the pole base, pouring a new pole base, erecting a new pole, putting on the new LED light fixture, and getting everything turned up. That's not a lot of money. We expect 2 to 4 weeks for each one of these to be installed, construction timeline.
Well, and this is something that I want to just touch on quickly and move on to the final question because of time running short. But the things you just noted, there are laws proposed in several states in which localities would not be able to recover those costs. And in the past, that is something that I've argued, and I know, and I'm pretty sure others have agreed. I think you agree. If a state is going to limit that, then basically that's a shift to taxpayers, and it's one might say, well, we were so excited about small cells that we want taxpayers to subsidize it. But I don't actually think that's an argument that many people would say, given the profitability of the telephone companies today.
Not very many people I know of would want that. So they have a bill proposed in Nebraska as well that does the same thing. It doesn't allow the city to cost recover for inspection. It doesn't allow the city to charge rent for the pole. I think it's challenging in that the carriers want to move quickly and deploy this infrastructure in advance of 5G. I agree, I get it. From a city's perspective, we feel it's our competitive advantage by being ready and having the agreements and actually actively pursuing these investment dollars. What I do have a problem with is when carriers, small businesses come in, and these are not small businesses, come in and say, we want the taxpayer to subsidize the deployment of our infrastructure, which we make a profit on. If you're going to pay the taxpayer back, fine. I have no problem with that. But if you're creating an unfunded mandate at the state level for municipalities to hire people to manage this construction, and then in an era of declining municipal revenues, that's tough. I don't know of any municipality that just has additional positions laying around to go out and inspect projects like this, especially specialized positions. But I guess we'll have to see if the state legislatures agree.
Right, and I think it's worth noting that I don't want to cast the big wireless companies totally under the bus, in the sense that there are areas that I've heard of where communities reject towers, and then they have poor cell service and they're frustrated. To some extent, let's hope that small cells properly designed will mitigate that, because they'll be less aesthetically displeasing. But to some extent, we do have to recognize we cannot have it all. We have to make sure the wireless companies are able to build the infrastructure they need if we're going to get good service. And that's where I think Lincoln's setting a good example. And I want to end by asking you for advice to other communities that are looking at this and trying to figure out what kind of policies or what kind of mindset even they should have to make sure that they can balance public needs with the needs of the wireless companies.
Well, I think that two things. One, I think you should realize as a community that this infrastructure is coming and you should be prepared for it. There are so many resources out there today. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance, Next Century Cities.
Those sound like really wonderful groups that people should support.
They are wonderful groups. And, they have draft agreements. I think there's really almost no excuse not to have an agreement in draft form, a place to start when a carrier comes to you now. There's been so much talk about small cells and the deployment of small cells that right-of-way managers, IT directors should have this information at least in their law department being reviewed. Any one of the several draft agreements out there, I think San Francisco, Boston, Dallas, ours, you just pick one of the draft agreements and at least have a starting place to have a discussion. I don't think that telling the carrier come back to me in 6 months or a year is viable, because they have customers they need to serve. And this is an impediment to them improving the service and being competitive with the other carriers in the market.
And you've already mentioned that you are discourage using existing poles. You think it makes a lot of sense to find ways of getting properly designed poles in there. So I don't think we have to rehash that. But do you have any recommendations in terms of the processes that need to be created?
I would use existing processes if possible. And so creating new processes for a city can be painful, depends on your culture. But using existing process, we repurposed the administrative plan review process for small cell reviews, and we just created a new category within it. It follows the exact same workflow, the exact same people see it, and we've had education with those staff getting ready for this permit. And then on your construction side, construction permits, having been doing this for 16 years now in the construction space, they should be easy to get, but the follow-through should be significant. So I can come in and ask for a permit, that's great. If I have an engineer stamp it or whatever your municipality requires, fine. But if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, then the penalties are pretty significant. And I think that way you put the onus on the business to actually get out there and do what they say they're going to do. And I think that's what businesses want.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on once again and tell us some more about what Lincoln's up to. Really is a great place. Strongly recommend people swing through if you're nearby. Thanks again.
Thank you for that, Chris. Good to talk to you.
That was Christopher and David Young, right-of-way manager for the city of Lincoln, Nebraska. They were discussing the community's new small cell technology project. Learn more about Lincoln at muninetworks.org, where we've written about their investments. You can also hear David talk with Christopher in episodes 228 and 182 of the podcast. We have transcripts for this and other Community Broadband Bits podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. You can follow Christopher on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. You can also follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle is @muninetworks. Subscribe to this podcast and all of the podcasts in the ILSR family on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Never miss out on our original research. Subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. Thank you to Admiral Bob for the song Turbo a Tornado, licensed through Creative Commons. And thanks for listening to episode 238 of the Community Broadband Bits podcast.